The night of April 8, 2022 was a seemingly typical Friday night for Debanhi Susana Escobar Bazaldúa, an 18-year-old law student in Escobedo, Nuevo León, Mexico. Her life, like that of many young people, was focused on studies, friends, and the vibrant social scene of Monterrey. But that night, she would become the face of Mexico's relentless and devastating crisis of femicide and institutional failure. Her story is a chilling descent into the heart of a broken system, a true crime case that quickly became a national trauma. The search for Debanhi and the subsequent discovery of her body exposed the agonizing truth about seeking justice in a country where women vanish with horrifying regularity. The malice of the system, rather than just an individual killer, is the central antagonist of this narrative. Debanhi's profile was that of a diligent, bright student with clear plans for her future. She was known to be responsible, though. Like any young adult, she enjoyed socializing. Her parents, Mario Escobar and Dolores Bazaldúa, were deeply devoted and fiercely protective, a fact that would later fuel their relentless pursuit of the truth. Debanhi was not a marginal figure. She came from a stable, middle-class family, a detail that ironically contributed to the case's high-profile status, as many working-class victims of femicide in Mexico receive tragically little media attention. The tragedy lies not only in her death, but in the revelation that even relative privilege could not shield a young woman from the endemic violence of the region. On the evening of April 8th, Debanhi, along with two friends, Yvonne and Sarah, attended a party at a private home. When that party ended around midnight, they decided to attend a larger second gathering at the Quinta El Diamante in the municipality of Escobedo. This detail, the movement between parties, became a crucial, controversial point. Witnesses later suggested Debanhi may have consumed alcohol and potentially marijuana, leading to the first insidious layer of victim blaming that the authorities and social media readily exploited. This public discussion, focusing on her choices rather than the criminal act, served as an immediate distraction from the real issue. Her safety was compromised because predatory behavior is normalized. The events of that night are shrouded in confusion and contradiction, largely due to conflicting accounts and the systemic failure of the investigation. At approximately 4:00 a.m. on April 9th, Debanhi left the party after an argument with her friends. The exact nature of the disagreement remains disputed, but the outcome was undeniable. She was isolated and vulnerable. Her friends later claimed they offered to call her father, but that Debanhi refused. Regardless of the exact dynamic, she was left on the roadside. Her friends called a trusted contact, a driver, Juan David Cuéllar, who worked for a taxi app, to pick her up. This designation of trusted is deeply misleading. Cuéllar was simply a contact they had used before, not a vetted professional service, further highlighting the precarious steps young women must take for basic safety in this environment. Cuéllar, the driver, remains a central figure in the controversy, and his psychological profile, or at least his actions, warrants scrutiny. He admitted that after picking her up, Debanhi became aggressive and allegedly asked him to stop the car. This led to the creation of the case's infamous symbol, the last known photograph. Cuéllar took a photograph of Debanhi standing alone on the side of a deserted highway, the Nuevo Laredo Monterrey Road, at approximately 4:26 a.m. His claim was that he did so at her request to prove she had safely exited his vehicle after she allegedly behaved erratically. However, critics argue the photo itself, taken from the driver's seat with Debanhi facing the vehicle's headlights, suggests an attempt to document an abandonment rather than a safe drop-off, a chilling piece of evidence that seems to exonerate the driver, while simultaneously condemning his inaction. The image, showing the young woman in a skirt and high-top sneakers standing under the pale light of the highway, became the agonizing symbol of her disappearance. The chronology of the official investigation that followed is a disturbing study in gross negligence and institutional failure. Debanhi was reported missing, and for days, the search was led primarily by her parents and volunteer groups, not the FGE, Fiscalia General de Justicia. The FGE's Initial, damaging theory was that Debanhi had run away or disappeared voluntarily. This official narrative severely delayed serious investigative efforts. This delay, coupled with the contamination of potential crime scenes, is a profound testament to the deep-seated procedural failures in cases involving femicide in Mexico. The police initially searched the area, including the perimeter of the Motel Nueva Castilla, which sat just meters from where the driver's photo was taken. Crucially, they interviewed motel staff whose statements would later prove to be false, or, at best, grossly misleading. The police searched the motel area 4 times and declared the area clear, suggesting either incredible incompetence or deliberate obstruction. The failure to secure and thoroughly search the motel on the first day is arguably the most significant procedural error, allowing time for potential evidence to be destroyed or concealed. Mario Escobar, Debanhi's father, became an indispensable, though unwelcome, partner in the investigation. He and his wife leveraged the power of social media and the media circus to maintain pressure, a strategy necessary because the institutions failed them. They meticulously reviewed the limited CCTV footage, often blurry and incomplete, that police initially dismissed. This footage showed Debanhi entering the grounds of a logistics company near the highway, then leaving, and finally, seemingly walking toward the entrance of the Motel Nueva Castilla. The social and internet reaction was immediate and explosive. Debanhi's striking image and the chilling context of her abandonment resonated across social media platforms in Mexico and globally, turning the case into an international rallying cry against violence toward women. Hashtags like #Justicia para Debanhi trended for weeks, fueled by anger over the government's inadequate response. Online sleuths and citizens groups organized massive search efforts, constantly scrutinizing the FGE's inadequate response. This high-profile media coverage forced the FGE to intensify its efforts, but the initial contamination and negligence were irreparable. The controversy was fueled by the stark contrast between the government's dismissiveness and the parents' desperate public search. 13 days after her disappearance, on April 20, after an anonymous tip, Debanhi's decomposing body was found inside a cistern, an underground water tank on the grounds of the Motel Nueva Castilla. The location itself, inside a property the police had repeatedly searched, ignited massive public outrage and suspicion, leading to the widespread belief that the motel staff or the investigators themselves were involved in a cover-up. The initial findings and the legal outcomes were a chaotic mess. The first official autopsy claimed the cause of death was a blow to the head and suggested accidental death, that she had somehow fallen into the cistern. This conclusion was met with immediate, justified skepticism. Her parents, distrusting the authorities, demanded an independent examination. The second, independent autopsy, conducted at the behest of the family, contradicted the first. It revealed signs pointing to possible sexual assault, significant bruising, and a sequence of injuries that suggested a struggle and homicide that occurred before she entered the water. The third, federal forensic analysis, conducted months later, settled on a primary cause of death due to deep contusion of the neck, confirming the violent nature of her death and ruling out the accidental drowning theory. The full chronology, from her disappearance on April 9th to the discovery of her body, is a heartbreaking timeline of police failures and a parent's agonizing fight against indifference. The killer's profile remains unsolved and highly debated. Was the killer the driver, Juan David Cuéllar, whose suspicious actions and controversial photo placed him at the start of the disappearance? Was it a motel employee who would have local knowledge and access to the cistern? Or was it an unknown predator, someone who seized the opportunity presented by a young woman abandoned on a dark highway? The FGR is still pursuing leads, with the focus shifting to the possibility of abduction and homicide, suggesting a predator deliberately targeted her in her moment of extreme vulnerability. The driver remains a person of interest, but without definitive physical evidence, the true killer remains elusive. The social reaction and aftermath are crucial. The Debanhi Escobar case fueled widespread protests across Mexico, demanding an end to femicide and government corruption. It forced a conversation about the vulnerability of women, the failure of public transport systems, and the culture of impunity that allows these crimes to proliferate. The case stands not just as a murder mystery, but as a political and humanitarian crisis. As of November 1, 2025, the legal outcomes are still unfolding. Several individuals, including officials and motel employees, have been detained or investigated for negligence, lying to authorities, and making false statements regarding the search. 2 former FGE prosecutors were charged with covering up evidence. But no one has been definitively charged with her murder. The relentless advocacy of her parents, Mario Escobar and Dolores Bazaldúa, continues to be the driving force for justice, ensuring the case does not fade into the silent statistics of Mexico's missing women. What actions can the audience take? The Debanhi Escobar case teaches us that silence is complicity. The actionable conclusion here is to support organizations that fight femicide and institutional corruption in Mexico and Latin America, such as the organizations the Escobar family now works with. Furthermore, in our own communities, we must actively challenge victim blaming and demand accountability from law enforcement from the moment a person is reported missing. The media must focus on the crime, not the victim's choices. Share Debanhi's image and story, ensuring the world remembers her name and the cost of indifference. Her 2022 vanishing and the systemic failures that followed must serve as a perpetual indictment against injustice.